My name is Sarah Johnson. I'm 42 years old. Originally, I was working for a corporation, but I quit when I got married and have since been handling the accounting for my husband's company. We're a family of 4, with my husband and our 2 kids. Today, we're finally having a family outing. We traveled a bit away from New York to an outlet at the base of Mount Rainier. My husband's company has been busy, and as the accountant, I've been swamped too. Since I rarely get to shop at my leisure, my husband, thinking of me, took the kids for a stroll, letting me enjoy some much-needed shopping time. As I was wondering where to go next, I accidentally caught sight of someone I never wanted to see again. I quickly averted my gaze, hoping not to be noticed, and subtly quickened my pace. But my wish was in vain, as I soon heard a voice I never wanted to hear again. "Is that Sarah?" I didn't want to hear his voice or see him ever again. There he was, my ex-husband, who had callously left me for another woman 12 years ago. The warm space in my heart felt a tiny black ink spot dropping in, just like back then. I wanted to erase it immediately. I didn't even look up and tried to pass by with just a nod. But my ex-husband was not the kind to let that happen. His personality hadn't changed at all since then. "What, ignoring me? Shopping alone? Wait, did you come all the way here from New York by yourself? That's sad." His devilish nature was still intact, over 40 and still mocking me with sarcastic laughter. "It's none of your business, really." I should have just ignored him and walked away, but maybe I haven't changed either, unable to do that. More than that, I knew that ignoring him would only make him louder and more bothersome, so I just wanted to keep things as calm as possible. That was all I was thinking. "Oh, sorry. We're just a happy family here, hard for you to look at, huh? Oh, this kid? He's the one from that time, 12 years already. Meanwhile, you're still the same? Well, I guess no one would want an infertile old woman. 42 and single, I pity you." He always talked too much, saying whatever he wanted, regardless of anyone else's feelings. He was probably trying to show off his child to the me in his mind. Standing there was a well-groomed boy with an air similar to that notorious woman. It was a relief, or maybe not, that he didn't resemble the man in front of me at all. I couldn't help but wonder what goes on in the mind of this man who could talk so insensitively about such things in front of his own child. "Thanks, but you really don't need to worry about me, Mr. Shore." I had so much I wanted to say. Back then, I couldn't ask this man anything. But even if I had, I knew it wouldn't have changed anything, and now, it's meaningless and unwanted. So, I conceded as much as I could with that response. But this man didn't understand anything. "Huh? Worry about you? No way, that was sarcasm. You don't get it?" He laughed crudely with that woman, mocking me. The boy looked at them, his face a picture of confusion. For some reason, I felt pity for him and couldn't take my eyes off the child. Then, my ex-husband, hiding the boy behind him, yelled out, "What are you looking at? You'll rot just by looking at us." He threw a childish tantrum at me. Thanks to him, we attracted a bit of attention. I didn't want to look at them, I just wanted to leave. I had just nodded and tried to pass by, but they kept provoking me. But responding in kind would only add fuel to the fire. Even returning small words like earlier was just throwing fuel to this guy. Fully aware of this, I restrained myself to a vague, small smile. However, even that seemed to displease them, as they began to hurl more insults. No matter what, it seemed that just being me was enough to upset them. As I seriously wondered what to do, I heard a familiar, sweet voice. "Mom, do you know them?" Turning to the voice, I saw my son, Tyler, looking at me curiously. He had returned without me noticing, brought back by my husband from their stroll. My daughter, Emily, was also there. A few steps behind, my husband was smiling gently. "Ah, sorry, you're back? Were you having fun?" "Uh-huh. We were gonna go check out the play park, and we saw you here." "Oh, really?" "Yeah, these people are old acquaintances of mine." "Hey, Tyler, Emily, say hello." I called Tyler and Emily to my side and prompted them to greet my ex-husband's family. They both greeted. "Nice to meet you, I'm Tyler Johnson." "Hello, I'm Emily Johnson." The two of them were taken aback, clearly not expecting to be greeted by strangers. They were at a loss for words, struck by the surprise. I couldn't help but smile inwardly at their reaction, hoping for their forgiveness. "Hey, since it's been a while, can we talk a bit more? Is that okay?" "Sure, that's fine. We're gonna play over there, so take your time talking." Tyler's kind words made me smile naturally. Then, I noticed that child, staring at us enviously. Tyler. Yeah? What's up?" "This boy is about your age. Why don't you play with him?" I said, introducing my ex-husband's son to Tyler. Tyler and Emily love making new friends, so I was sure they'd get along well. "Darling, could you please take care of them for a little longer?" I called out to my husband, who was standing behind the children. His gaze shifted to my ex-husband. My ex-husband, silent under that gaze, shrugged his shoulders slightly. My husband, who's a younger childhood friend, has always supported me after I was hurt by my ex-husband. When I moved back to my parents' house, my husband, who lived nearby, had seen me with my ex-husband. So even after all these years, he knew who this man was. With a soft reply and a nod to the two of them, he took our 3 kids and left. Then, my ex-husband, who had been silent until now, started muttering as if he couldn't hold it in. "Can't be." For him, it must have been unbelievable. Clearly, his face turned pale. I knew what that expression meant but didn't address it. If he wanted to know, he could ask himself. While I said I wanted to talk a bit more with the kids, my ex-husband, unable to hold back any longer, blurted out. "What does this mean?" "What does what mean?" "That. Just now. They're my family, what about it?" I cut him off and answered plainly. That's what he wanted to know, right? Glancing over, I saw the shocked woman and my ex-husband with a contorted face. It was just as I imagined, and I couldn't help but laugh to myself. "You weren't single? You just assumed that on your own. Then you should have said something. Why should I tell you every detail, Mr. Shore? We just happened to meet here. There's no reason for us to meet or interact ever again. But still. And what's so strange about me having a family? I'm a 42-year-old woman, after all." When I returned his earlier sarcastic remark, he bit his lip and looked away. I know exactly what the person in front of me wants to say. There's probably only one thing on his mind. He was bold enough to leave his wife for a mistress, but when it came to crucial moments, he was still a coward. "Something on your mind? Eh? Do you want to ask something? Huh? You look like it." His eyes flickered, showing his unease, while the woman beside him looked puzzled. If he couldn't ask, I'd tell him myself. Smiling at them, I said, "Both of them, Tyler and Emily, are my kids, born from me. Aren't they lovely? They look like me and my husband." I told them clearly and directly. My ex-husband froze, unable to process or say anything. It was the woman who reacted first. "Wait! Weren't you infertile?" Jumping right to the heart of the matter, I see. "But..." One thing I never confirmed back then. So, my ex-husband had told this woman about the fertility treatments. But his understanding was selfish and far from the truth. "I'm sorry, but I can have children." "Eh? Did Mr. Shore tell you I was infertile?" "You were going to fertility treatments, right?" His one-sided assumption and conclusion. Even the fertility treatments we attended together, he thought of it as your fault. I almost sighed at the revelation. "Unfortunately, I've had tests at the gynecologist, and it's been proven. Besides, I've been pregnant twice already, so there's really nothing to prove at this point." "No way." "It's true." "So, our compatibility was just really bad?" What's the point of asking such a thing now? It's a creepy question with no real answer, and I completely ignored it. Then the woman bit back. You're really telling the truth, right? What? You could have just adopted kids or something. So, after compatibility, now it's about adoption. I don't really care, but I need to make this clear. You're welcome to inquire at the gynecologist I visited, or even do a DNA test with my kids. I don't have any problem with that. What? Should I introduce you? Huh? After I divorced Mr. Shore, I started dating my current husband and married him 6 months later. We had kids soon after. So, my eggs are actually super healthy. I even got a stamp of approval from my gynecologist. Introduce what? What? Why do I have to be introduced to your gynecologist by you? The woman's face twisted as she snapped back. My words had hit a nerve with this simple-minded person. Well, you don't have a second child, right? What? Mr. Shore always said he wanted 3 kids, so, should I introduce you? They probably never imagined someone like me would say something like that. Both were speechless, frozen in place. Whether they didn't intend to have another child or couldn't, it was clear from their reactions. Their faces, previously contorted, quickly became docile. So, may I ask you something? I said, and they just turned their eyes towards me, still frozen. Whether they were wary or something else, well, that's none of my business, but I was about to confront a suspicion I had been carrying alone for over 10 years. There's something I've been wondering about for a long time. What is it? Can I say it? Their wariness intensified. Struggling to keep a straight face, I calmly said to them, "Is that child really Mr. Shore's?" What? That child, is he really Mr. Shore's son? It's important, so I said it twice. Those seemingly casual words turned out to be a massive bombshell. The woman went pale without a word, and my ex-husband's face turned bright red in anger. What? Are you kidding me? You heard it too, didn't you? He's my child. The child Jennifer and I made with love, I told you that before. He started shouting again in the middle of the outlet. Given the nature of the topic, we drew a lot of stares. The woman, either embarrassed or wanting to escape, quickly hid behind my ex-husband. Of course, I heard that. More than enough. Then. But you see. As my ex-husband tried to deny my words, I quickly interjected. I had to deny that because I know it's not true. My ex-husband, looking puzzled, probably couldn't even imagine what I was talking about. I briefly reminisced about the final days of our marriage, where such confusion was the norm, and felt a thin veil of emotion cloud my vision. It's not that I felt sad anymore, but recalling those days when I carried everything on my own made me feel a bit vulnerable. Shaking off that brief moment of weakness, I faced them again. Huh? What does that mean? Well, it's kind of late now. What are you talking about? Should I say it? Just spit it out. Hurry up, you crazy woman. His insults, so familiar, made me wonder if that's all he knew. Yeah, I was just trying to be considerate of you, Mr. Shore. Huh? If you really want to know that you're infertile, I can tell you in great detail. At my words, my ex-husband looked completely stunned, and the other woman let out a silent scream. As expected, all the color drained from her face. What's the matter? I thought you wanted to know. Why the shock and loss of color? What's wrong? I spoke a bit louder, deliberately, as the two of them grimaced. Well, of course. He left me for Jennifer because she had his child, but if he's infertile, it completely turns the story on its head. Hey, you're kidding, right? His voice was barely a whisper. He would want to think so, but facts don't change. I enlarged an image on my phone that I'd kept just in case a day like this would come and showed it to them. This is Mr. Shore, remember? The test you took during our fertility treatments. Ah. He probably didn't remember. Or had denied it so much it was erased from his memory. My words must have jogged his memory. He glanced down briefly, showing a bitter expression. Back when we were undergoing fertility treatments, the doctor had suggested testing the male side as well. But my husband, who blamed me for our inability to conceive, was not enthusiastic about it. However, he couldn't refuse a strong request from the doctor. In a way, his cowardly nature was a blessing then. But eventually, before the results came out, Jennifer's issue surfaced, and he left me. I ended up hearing the results alone. The doctor was kind, and I couldn't just ignore it after the divorce. I was shocked when I went to hear the results. Mr. Shore was infertile. After all, shortly before, he came to report that they had conceived a child and left me. Was a natural reaction, right? Right, Jennifer. The woman, called by her name for the first time today, struggled to compose her frozen expression. My ex-husband, fixated on the phone screen, turned to look at the pale-faced woman and asked curtly, "Did you lie to me?" Did you lie to me? Well, that's... If I'm infertile, I can't have children. Now that I think about it calmly, we only had intimate relations properly once before the supposed pregnancy. And even then, we used protection. Every other time, I was too drunk to even finish. So, even if I wasn't infertile, the chances of us having a child together were practically zero. Right? He looked at me, as if seeking confirmation. I didn't affirm or deny, just silently observed them. Taking my silence as confirmation, he let out a heavy sigh and a click of the tongue, scratching the back of his head in frustration. Then Jennifer suddenly became defiant. But that's how it was made to look. What do you mean? Both my ex-husband and I questioned Jennifer, overlapping our voices in confusion. Facing us, she began to speak with an air of enjoyment. I was really living it up back then. I had countless flings and one-night stands, you know. I was 20, so you get it, right? That phase of enjoying good times with attractive men? Well, it's not my fault I was so popular. She even started laughing by herself, leaving my ex-husband and me speechless, simply listening to the words pouring out of her eager mouth. I was so carefree, never got pregnant no matter how much I did it, so I gradually let my guard down. Sometimes, if it felt too good or I was just lazy, I went with the flow without thinking. That kind of became the norm for me. I could somewhat understand that mindset. At 20 or so, still new to such experiences. It's possible to get carried away or overwhelmed by pleasure. But that's also why contraception and protection from STDs are important. The thought of her being involved with numerous partners made me shudder. What if my ex-husband had caught something and then? Well, it's just a hypothetical, but the thought was chilling. And, well, eventually it happened, I got pregnant. But even after I found out, I had no idea whose child it was. Around that time, I met Steve at the nightclub where I was working. He was 12 years older, decent looking, and a 32-year-old manager at a big company. You could see his bright future from a mile away. I decided he had to be the father, so I set my plan into motion. The facts she recounted so nonchalantly were incredibly selfish, and the first thing that came to my mind was the innocent, puzzled face of the child I saw earlier. The thought of how his life could be affected by such adult selfishness was my only concern. As expected, my ex-husband said, "Now that I know the truth, I can't stay with you." It was a line that implied a looming divorce. His demeanor reminded me of myself 12 years ago. I had so many questions, but knew asking them wouldn't change anything. For the first time, I felt a twinge of sympathy for him. Of course, Jennifer started making a scene, accusing him of being cruel to their child. Once again, she was using the child as a shield to protect herself. But my ex-husband, having regained his composure from the whole conversation, was unswayed. Get a DNA test and find the real father. I'm not responsible for raising him. What? DNA doesn't matter. You're Ken's legal father. We were married when Ken was born. You're the only father he has. Jennifer was desperate, clutching at my ex-husband as her hands turned white from the strain. Yet, my ex-husband calmly removed her hand and stated the reality. Even if we're legally parent and child, that can be contested in court. Why would you do that? My ex-husband, a law school graduate who once considered becoming a lawyer and worked in the legal department at his company, knew many lawyers personally. Being in such an environment, my ex-husband was, understandably, well-versed in law. I thought it was foolish of him to dismiss his wife and run off with a mistress, but knowledge indeed proves to be an ally in life. His tone was firm, using the law as his shield. Jennifer could only shout in response.
After all this time, betraying your own son who adored you as his real father.
What did you say?
You're betraying your own dear son, aren't you? The first betrayal was by you. Give me back my life. Give Ken back his life.
Their voices echoed again across the outlet plaza. My ex-husband, almost in tears, shouted that it wasn't just about him. Ken's life needed to be returned as well. Jennifer's betrayal wasn't just against him alone. He was facing the reality that it had also been inflicted upon Ken. He was confronting that fact, probably realizing his own actions had largely contributed to the situation. In the distance, in the park area, I could see the 3 children playing. They were laughing together so naturally, it was hard to believe they'd only just met. I felt a strong responsibility to protect these smiles.
Mr. Shore.
What?
Ken, right? He's cute, isn't he?
Of course. He's my son.
My son, huh?
Ah. Even after facing such a truth, those words came out naturally. To him, a life with Ken had become ingrained, a daily routine he took for granted.
Of course. You've been looking forward to his birth, and ever since he was born, you've always been together. Being a boy, he must have spent a lot of time playing with his dad, right?
Well, yeah.
That's great, then.
What?
Does the blood relation really matter?
That's... Probably, my ex-husband was starting to think about it. And I knew his conclusion would come soon. The problem was Jennifer.
What do you think about Ken? Huh? Ever since I met you, I wondered, with such long nails that seem impractical for housework, do you actually do any house chores or child rearing? Well, Ken is so attached to Steve, he does most of the care. Plus, I'm super clumsy, so before things get worse, Steve does most of the housework, you know.
Ah, I see. My ex-husband had indeed become Jennifer's convenient man. No wonder she wouldn't consider divorce, no matter what happened. Even if she had a child by chance, she knew she could return to the same lifestyle after giving birth.
So, what do you do all day? Hang out with friends, go drinking, stuff like that? You were really just looking for a money bag and a convenient house husband, weren't you? That's what I said, right? I worked hard to make sure I got him. I'm so lucky Steve is such a good guy. Enough already.
My ex-husband abruptly cut off Jennifer's continuous talk and then, tightening his expression, said,
I'm divorcing you, and I'll take Ken with me.
He announced his intention to involve a lawyer, confronting the now uproarious Jennifer. This is fine. Ken's smile will surely be protected. On Sunday, the kids were playing games in the living room. I heard them call out Ken's name.
Ken's online. Let's invite him.
Tyler had exchanged game IDs with Ken that day and had since been playing and chatting online. Through Tyler, I learned that my ex-husband had divorced Jennifer and she had left. Concerned that Ken might be downcast since his mother left, I learned that there hadn't been much change for him. His father was often out for work on weekdays, and his mother was rarely home, so it wasn't so different for him. Furthermore, I heard that sometimes when Ken returned from school, he would find unfamiliar men at home with his mother. It seemed likely that she had been using my ex-husband as a financial resource and a house husband while seeking new relationships outside. She probably took advantage of the situation to divorce and move on with another man. Hearing about Jennifer's unbelievable lifestyle recently, I realized people don't change easily. This reality might seem very cruel to Ken, especially in black and white. But in fact, I think this might be for the best. The reality is Ken's voice, coming from the gaming console, sounds very cheerful.
Thanks for letting them exchange IDs that day.
I said to my husband, seated across from me, who smiled warmly at the sound. It was my husband who naturally accepted Tyler's request in the park.
Yeah, they seemed really happy. But I'd rather not get directly involved with your ex-husband. Of course, I feel the same. But I do believe his love for Ken is genuine.
Yes. My husband smiled warmly. In fact, it was my ex-husband who was eager for children when we started fertility treatments. He has always loved children, and there's no doubt he was doting even before Ken was born. Him raising Ken with deep affection, regardless of blood ties, would surely make Ken's days happier. I'm confident that if the day comes when they have to face the truth, those two will be okay. For some reason, I feel sure about it. And as for me, I can't help but worry about Ken in the back of my mind. Knowing the kids are connected online, I can get a glimpse of how he's doing and feel reassured about his safety when he's home alone. I'm sure my husband feels the same way. We may never intersect with their lives again, but the children live in a different world. I hope these kids can always spend their days with smiles, listening to their lively conversations in the living room.